Are you a man looking for an intensive program to help you overcome your sexually addictive behaviors? Gateway to Freedom is your answer. Gateway to Freedom is a 3-day intensive workshop for men seeking to overcome sexually addictive behaviors. Whether married, single, or divorced, Gateway to Freedom will help men regain hope for a new life of purity and real contentment. The workshop is conducted by experts in the field of sexual addiction recovery. Your experts have over 35 years of combined experience. Read testimonials of workshop alumni at gatewaymen.com. Get all the info and register online at gatewaymen.com or call 1-800-49-PURITY.
Hi, my name is Jonathan, and I'm the founder of the Gateway to Freedom Workshop. I want to personally invite you to be part of our next intensive, coming up February 21st through the 23rd. So call us today at 1-800-49-PURITY or visit gatewaymen.com.
Welcome to Pure Sex Radio, training men, educating women. Are you ready to get real and start living each day in purity? This dynamic program is designed to educate, encourage, and equip listeners with the tools necessary for living a life of sexual purity. Pure Sex Radio brings you the best in mobile talk radio. Listen to real-life struggles, learn how to overcome lust, pornography, and sex addiction, and get serious about purity. Your hosts for Pure Sex Radio are Jonathan Doherty and Stephen Cervantes. Jonathan is the director of Be Broken Ministries and founder of the Gateway to Freedom Workshop for Men. Stephen is the founder of the Hope Counseling Center. Visit us online at puresexradio.com. And now, please welcome Jonathan and Stephen on Pure Sex Radio.
Good day, radio listeners. Welcome to this week's edition of the Pure Sex Radio broadcast. We're glad to have you here with us. My name is Jonathan, and I'm here with Stephen. Stephen, how are you today?
I'm well. Thank you, Jonathan.
Excellent. Well, folks, just a reminder, we are a listener-supported broadcast, and wow, we're just so thankful for those of you who have decided to come along and partner with us and help us just continue to spread a message of hope and purity and integrity, not only just in our country, but in over 80 countries around the world. I'm always amazed and fascinated when we get our reports from where the podcast is being listened to, and it's just amazing to see how the Lord is moving in this broadcast around the world. And if you'd like to know about the ways in which you can come alongside and partner with us to continue to expand our reach, just go to puresexradio.com and click on the donate button. And that's where you can learn about the various ways that you can come alongside and help us in our mission of healing sexual brokenness by God's grace, one story at a time. Well, Stephen, I'm going to pass this off to you and see where this week's radio broadcast is going to take us regarding some of these maybe self-limiting behaviors.
So I'm reading this article. I got it off on Yahoo. It's a Forbes article, and it's titled Successful People, the 8 Self-Limiting Beliefs They Avoid. And so obviously this is a work article. And I thought, though, for folks in recovery and folks that are trying to improve themselves, do you do any of these self-limiting beliefs that hinder you from going forward and being successful from an emotional growth standpoint?
And so the key here is the successful people actually avoid these particular behaviors, right?
Yes, that's right. So, number 1, engaging in below-the-line thinking. What's above the line, what's below the line, but they're doing below the line. And so somebody that's below the line is thinking, hey, what's happening to me? This is out of my control. I can't do anything about it. This isn't fair, the situation is bad. It shouldn't be like this. Do you hear some self-limiting, below-the-line thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it has that quality of saying, this isn't fair, and so I can't do anything to change this. It's in some ways below the line thinking is saying that your success, or I guess your destiny or growth or whatever you want to call it, is based on circumstance, right? I mean, it's limited by what's going on around you. So, for instance, let's say in maybe an economical standpoint, below the line thinking could say, well, listen, look at where I live, look at the lack of jobs that are available here, and look at what's going on around me in my city and my country. I can't get a job. I can't overcome these obstacles.
But now apply that to a sexual situation. What excuses might a sexual person make?
Look at the culture I live in. Look at what's on TV. Look at, good grief.
Everybody. It's
you
so
can't
bad.
even go into your grocery store without
the way
seeing
women dress,
magazines everywhere, and
everybody's doing it.
Yeah. So because of all that, look how women dress. Because of all that, see, I can't overcome that. I can't be a man or woman of integrity.
So that's below the line thinking. And we're using this article that they've used for work. And we're making an application to this whole idea of, can we hang on to integrity, or are we using 8 limiting beliefs that keep us from being successful?
So if you want to be a man or woman of integrity, essentially you've got to avoid below the line thinking. That just makes it all about my circumstances dictating, whether or not I'm going to be successful. No, you have a choice to make. You can make a choice. You can, we're even told in the scriptures to be in the world, but not of it. So God obviously has a perspective that says, hey, who cares about how depraved your culture is? You can still hold integrity. You can still be pure, even in a completely impure culture.
So the second thought is fantastical, wishful thinking, and where you say it's better over there, and they have it easier, and they can do it because of their situation, and I'm in a bad place, and so I have to. And there's this little example in here about the difference between this wishful, fanciful thinking and action. And the example is this girl says, I want to write a book, and I want to be a motivational speaker. And then she's challenged, and he says to her, are you writing? Are you speaking now in your community? Are you practicing writing every day? Well, no, I'm not writing anything, and no, I'm not practicing speaking, but I want to be a great author, and I want to be a great public speaker someday.
And so the parallel here could be, we get guys all the time that they've got, they've got some awesome fantasies as far as what ideas about what they want to be. Man, I want to be a total man of integrity. You know what? I want to be an incredibly selfless, loving husband to my wife.
And I'm going to go home and I'm going to be cured and I'm going to be fixed and I'm never going to do this again.
And so then the question can be, okay, are you part of a group? No.
How many days of success have you had? And can we start counting those
are
small
you
steps?
Seeing a counselor? Have you done anything to protect yourself on your computer? Because you say you get on the internet 3 hours a day and look at porn. So there's this massive difference between having great ideas of what you want to accomplish and where you want to go, and then actually doing the work that's necessary to get there. It's great to have the idea, I want to be a selfless, loving, present husband. But what are you doing to be selfless, loving, and present? Are you making sacrifices of your time and your energy and listening and speaking and talking to your wife and serving her? And it's like take things out of the idea phase, the fantasy phase, and actually begin to implement concrete action.
Good. Number 3 on self-limiting beliefs. Unsuccessful people remain powerless and speechless. They don't have any power. They don't have any energy. They don't advocate for themselves. And they don't speak for themselves. They're like a victim with no voice. And so they're stuck because this happened to them, this terrible thing happened to them, and they can't do anything about it. And they've done this so long, they can't stop themselves. And it's such a big project, they're overwhelmed. And they keep it a secret. They don't want to tell anybody. Nobody can help them. If anybody has a little quick answer, it won't really help them. So they don't have a view that says they have any power. They can't even figure out where the power source is. And then they can't advocate and speak. And, the Bible says the power of life and death is in your tongue. They have no speech. They cannot speak and advocate for life. They're trapped.
Now, I want to be careful not to unduly offend anybody out there, because I'm going to talk about victimhood for a second. And the reality is that about roughly 80% of those who develop a sexual addiction have some form of abuse in their histories, whether it be sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, whatever. And so the reality is that you may have been a victim of a very real abuse. The issue here that we're talking about is that you do not need to live as a victim. There's a big difference there. It doesn't take away the reality that, yes, you were victimized. You were, somebody else's brokenness was imposed upon you. Somebody else used their power in an inappropriate way. You were violated. But you do not have to live as a victim. You do not have to live in that violation any longer. And that's kind of what the freedom of recovery, really what recovery does, is it doesn't just free you from maybe your addictive behaviors. It really is a process of freeing you from what has bound you. And for many who have been abused in their past, that abuse continues to bind them. It continues to dictate their life and how they live and how they see the world around them. And so this is saying, if you want to be successful in your recovery, don't allow your trauma, your abuses from the past to continue to bind you any longer. You have a voice.
Yes.
You can speak up.
Find your voice. That's right. And realize there's power and there's church, right? And that's the source of power, is to go to a spiritual community and fellowship. And
yeah, that's why community is so important, is because it gives you a place, a safe place, for your voice to be heard and your story to be heard.
Mm-hmm. So number 4, on self-limiting beliefs, we're reviewing an article in the Forbes online, Yahoo. Number 4, it says, putting off investing in themselves. Unsuccessful people put off investing in themselves. They see other people and their needs as much more important than their own. And they make excuses on why they don't take time to invest in themselves. But the article says successful people don't wait. They spend money and time and energy on this mission of growth. And so they realize education, growth opportunities, pushing yourself, learning, doing those things, and to include like attending one of our seminars. I know this is self-serving, but the Gateway to Freedom seminars are a way to invest in yourself. Getting some of the material we have is a way to invest in yourself. Read books put out by other people. What are we doing right now? Jonathan and I are going over an article that is about growth, and we're using it and making the application because we want to be people that are on a growth mission.
You know, one of the things that was really transformative to me early on in my recovery, and I've tried to be really faithful in repeating it as often as I can to others, is when somebody told me early on in my recovery, you are worth your recovery. And the first time I heard that, I didn't know what to do with that, because that seems so foreign. Again, because I had just always seen, well, man, if you do anything that means you're going to look in a mirror, or that you're going to, start looking at yourself and kind of digging into your life and quote unquote taking care of you. It just seems so foreign because I had falsely assumed that a good Christian is always and only focused on the needs of others. But then, you know what I did? You know what I did, Stephen, early in my recovery? I spent some time I call it reading the red letter Bible, just reading the words of Jesus. What did Jesus do and what did Jesus say? And you know what? One of the most shocking things I found out is that he took care of himself. I mean, he served others,
Yes.
he healed others, but there's these phrases periodically that would say he often, not just sometimes, but he often withdrew to lonely places to pray.
Yes, I was just thinking. Yes.
He took care of himself.
For renewal, yes.
And there were times even with maybe just him and his disciples, just the 12 of them, they'd go away.
Let's get in the boat and go to the other side.
Yeah.
Let's get away from this crowd, yes.
And so then when somebody finally told me, you're worth your recovery, I started kind of putting these together and realizing, well, okay, if Jesus took care of himself,
that's good.
he had a sense of his own worth and his value, that if he was going to be of any use and help to others, he had to be healthy spiritually, emotionally, physically. Because how can we give what we don't possess? So this idea of kind of putting off investing in ourselves and saying, the noble thing is just to be totally poured out for the sake of others is sort of it's if I can put it this way, it's an immature view of how you really can help another person. Because if you really want to help somebody else, you can only give what you have. If you're completely spent, you're tired, you're addicted, you don't have anything of real value to give to another person. So I really hone in on this one. This one to me is really important, and I want the listeners out there who are feeling like you're tired, you're spent, you're worn out, you are worth your recovery. You're worth the time and energy that it's going to take for you to get healthy.
To be invested into and poured into and nurtured and built up, right? Because then you come into the kingdom with a contribution, right, and with some energy. And
you have something to give at that point.
Right. So the whole idea of number 5 is resisting change. Successful people, the article reads, don't break themselves against what is. You hear people saying, well, this isn't fair, and that's not right, and if this doesn't change, this should change. And they're just stuck. They're just stuck resisting what is. Successful people are flexible and fluid and nimble. They find a way around it. They don't fight against what the expectations are. They don't spend time complaining. They go, what is, and what can I do about it, and how can I move forward? And so the application in my mind is, you have a struggle, you have some weaknesses, and so, there are limitations. There's only a few groups around, but those are the groups. Some guys will go, I go to a group and I don't like it, so I don't go back, because they don't do group the way I want them to do group. Well, you're sort of resisting, and you're going to stay stuck if you say whatever isn't right.
And, this makes me think, too, about what happens, I see a lot of times in recovery is guys start getting on sort of the what-if train. Wives do this, too. Well, what if this and what if that? But, what if I do this and she does that, and then I do this and she does... And they start going down this this path of thinking that really it's not real. It's just it's a fantasy. And so I think what you have to do is you have to be able to say, replace your what-if thinking with what is thinking. And be willing to engage reality where it is. And sometimes, let's be honest, that's a scary place. Because what is she's wanting to throw a pot at my head. She's angry. I'm scared. And what we'd like to do is do the what-if game. But what if I didn't tell her X, Y, or Z? And what if she would do that? And it's like that immediately when you start saying what if, you're outside of reality. And so I think if you're going to be successful on this journey, you've got to be able to manage and go with what is, and not keep resisting it and saying, but I want it to be different. I got to make sure this is, if she would just do this, then I would do that, right? Instead of saying, well, let's look at what she is doing, not what I wish her to be doing, and let's deal with that. And
that's the reality you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's kind of like what you're saying with the whole group thing. You know, we get calls from guys all the time, and they say, well, listen, there's no group in my area. And we say, well, you're there, right?
Start one.
Just grab a couple guys.
That's it. Get one other guy, and it's a group.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. So the next self-limiting belief is honoring other people's priorities over your own. And so successful people know what they need, what they value, what are their concerns and their mission. And they work towards their top priorities because they're well-defined and they set boundaries. And they say no to any other endeavor or behavior that knocks them off track. And so in our language would be protect your time and your recovery, because everything else will want to come in and intrude, and you're going to want to skip some journaling, some reading, some going to group, take care of other people. Don't protect your mission to work on recovery.
And that's really what I think a lot of this is about is, recovery really is about a reprioritizing of your life. Because up to the point of entering recovery, what is in reality taken priority? Your addiction. I mean, we like to say things. I think about it like when we're in church or something, and you're in a small group, and people will say, "What are your priorities?" And what's the answer, Stephen? God, family, others, right? And then we get brutally honest and we go, "All right, television, my sexual addiction, porn." It's like, what's really taking priority? And so recovery says we want to get really clear about what the priorities are going to be and set goals that are helping us achieve what those priorities. If you really do want your priorities to be God first, family second, others third, what are you doing to actually begin to establish those as your priority? God, meaning I want to be a man of holiness and virtue. Okay, what are you doing to work towards those priorities and not getting distracted with all the other periphery?
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend of mine recently who was saying, we've probably all heard about the 80-20 rule, where 20% of the people do 80% of the work. But he was also talking about that in terms of our priorities. What if we started breaking down our priorities in 80-20? You'd probably find that about 80% of the things that most of us are focusing on are not really needing to be focused on, whether it be in our work or family, wherever. And so if you start breaking down and say, okay, look at what am I actually engaged in? This kind of gets back to the what is. What am I actually engaged in as it pertains to my life, recovery, relationships, God? You might start realizing 80% of this I need to not be focusing on because only 20% of it is really, truly important. And then so if we start kind of getting in the habit of let's really discipline ourselves to drop off the 80% that is not useful, not helpful to my goals, to what's really important, then we might start seeing some progress because we're really then focusing on what's truly important over the long term.
So self-limiting observation number 7 is just the whole idea of doubting yourself. Second guessing, you stepping back. The article says they don't, but they forgive themselves for what they don't know and the mistakes they've made. Successful people will forgive themselves and say, there are things I don't know and I've made mistakes and I'm going to accept that. And I'm still going to have hope and optimism. The unsuccessful person will doubt, hesitate, question, second guess, will start and stop, and just fumble around with doubt. And so I think in recovery, then doubt has to be a big issue also. I don't know if I can make it. I'm tired. Maybe this isn't the best. I don't know if I'm going the right way. If you hesitate, you got to behaviorally do the right things in recovery because your thought process isn't great.
Well, and I think, too, some of our doubt manifests in how we see God and his provision. We doubt that what he might offer is truly better than what porn offers or our lust. I mean, again, if we're going to be brutally honest here, I mean, listeners, think about that for just a second. When we are choosing to go back again and again and again to our lustful, selfish, addictive patterns, are we not, on some level, doubting that what God has to offer is not better than what we can get through porn and lust? I know that's sort of a painful statement to assess, but I mean, I've had to assess it in my own life, and I had to say, yeah, you know what? I was doubting that what God could offer me was actually better than what I could get through my lustful behaviors. And so I think we do have to address doubt. I think it is important. You know, when I was reading this particular one here, I was like, okay, I get it from the standpoint of maybe a person who is healthy and not struggling with self-doubt and saying, listen, I understand I've got some gaps in my judgment and things like that, but I'm going to forgive myself and keep going forward. I think we got to tweak it a little bit because, like you said, we are dealing with people, especially who are early on in recovery, that have very poor self-assessment skills. And I don't want to be the person to say, don't doubt yourself. Don't have any questions about your judgment and what you're thinking. No, I want the early guy in recovery to question everything about his judgment but I don't want him to question what God says about him and about what's good and what's right.
Yes.
And so I would just shift this one a little bit away from the article to where it's not so much about self-confidence as it is about, why don't we just take God at his word, that when he says, I've made you holy, I've made you pure, I've made you righteous, I've made you a new creation, what I've declared is good, then let's help a guy not doubt that. And then I think confidence can grow and recovery can go well.
Good. So the final self-limiting thought would be just searching for handouts and easy answers and give it to me and free and just help me, just do it for me, easy. Because I don't think anything's easy about struggling for purity.
Well, and this is one that I think comes up. This comes up sometimes with our workshops. I've had guys that have called me or emailed me and saying, why do you guys charge $799 for your workshop? And of course, part of the answer is, hey, there are just simply raw costs to doing this workshop when you think about housing and food and all of the resources that are provided and the counseling and the teaching, and it's 3 days, and so there's that. But more importantly, what I usually tell a guy is there is a very real and necessary cost to recovery. And a lot of times guys want that to be just something like time or a few hours in the week, a little bit of my mental energy. And I always tell guys in my own recovery, in my addiction, when I started tallying the total number of dollars that I spent in my addiction, it became a staggering number for me. And it was really convicting to me when I started realizing how cheaply I was investing in my recovery, when how lavishly I had invested in my addiction.
Wow, that's good.
And God really convicted me and said, Jonathan, listen, if you're willing to essentially pay out so much to go the wrong direction, why are you unwilling to pay out to go in the right direction? We should be investing way more time, money, energy, everything in our recovery if we really want to be successful, instead of trying to cut corners and think there's a cheap solution for my very expensive problem.
Agreed. So I would just ask God to bless all the listeners, bless Jonathan and myself as we try to encourage and lift up. And we want to release ourselves from self-limiting beliefs that hinder us. And we want to be people of the truth and light and good. And so we just agree in Jesus' name and end our program on that note.
So, folks, if you've listened to this and maybe some of these self-limiting behaviors you can really resonate with, maybe you've been in recovery for a little while and you realize, man, I'm kind of stuck because of some of these things we've talked about here today, please reach out to us. We want to help you get unstuck and help you move forward in your recovery and in your growth. And so we look forward to hearing from you, and we also look forward to having you back here again next week on the Pure Sex Radio broadcast.
Pure Sex Radio is paid for by Be Broken Ministries. Visit us online at puresexradio.com.